because the government's scientific advisors, SAGE, have published a document that they finalised on the 21st of September, which says that if you want to really bear down on this virus, you've got to do a whole range of measures that are currently not on the government's list. So, for example, it says there's a very strong case for what's known as a circuit breaker, which would be 2 weeks of full lockdown, simply to get us back to where we were a few weeks ago in terms of the amount of infection that there is around the place. They also recommend on the 21st of September that all teaching in universities this term, just before students went back, should be online or distance learning. Had that happened, we might not have seen the incredible surges in infection rates in student towns that are causing such tremendous concern now, not only to the scientists, but to the Prime Minister. And then again, it also says shut hairdressers. No sign of that. Shut restaurants. It is odd, isn't it, that, we have an idea from the government that if you're having a drink in a pub, there's a risk you're going to get the virus, but if you're having a drink in a restaurant, you're not going to get the virus. The virus really discriminates between pubs and restaurants. It's weird. The scientists don't think they discriminate. They say restaurants should be closed too. Now, it wasn't that long ago we had the Prime Minister and all his ministers saying, we're following the science is telling us what to do. We didn't get any of that today, did we? Do you want to know why we didn't get that? Because actually, it's as much about the politics. They are not following the science. We just got to hope that the measures that they think are politically possible also do enough to protect particularly vulnerable people.
Okay, well, it's going to be a long autumn. Thank you very much indeed. And a reminder that our website has full coverage of all today's announcements, and you can look up what the restrictions and indeed the guidance are for where you live at itv.com/news. Okay, Northern Ireland's First Minister says the response to rising numbers of COVID cases must be proportionate. It's understood chief medical officers there have advised ministers to introduce a full lockdown circuit breaker, including the closure of schools. Tonight, the First Minister said the executive would listen to all the evidence before making a decision.
If we put in certain restrictions, what's it going to mean for society here in Northern Ireland? What's it going to mean for the economy? So we'll be taking a balanced view over all of those things, because certainly we want to stop the rise of COVID. That's absolutely right. But we also want to protect people's jobs and livelihoods as well.
Scotland, meanwhile, will closely align with Boris Johnson's three-tier lockdown system in England. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said a similar graded system would be introduced across the country after the 2 weeks of local lockdowns expire. People in central Scotland are, of course, already living with restrictions on hospitality and travel.
At a strategic level, we will be looking to align as closely as possible with the other UK nations. I think it is important and it makes sense to try to do that. Though I would stress that operational decisions about which tiers might apply in which parts of our nations will be for each of us to take at a devolved level.
And the Welsh Government has criticised Boris Johnson for what it says are inadequate travel restrictions. Health Minister Vaughan Gething wants travel from areas with high infection rates in England to be restricted to prevent people visiting parts of Wales that are lockdown free. Okay, there were plenty of lessons for the government to learn from the summer exams fiasco. Whether they have or not will only, of course, become apparent next year. Today's announcement that most exams in England will be delayed by 3 weeks to give students more time to prepare was clearly intended to show plans are afoot to avoid further disruption. But there is scepticism about whether it's enough to make up for lost time.
Hands up now, who can tell me what a good brand is?
One question answered with what critics predict will prove to be overconfidence. The government says exams in England will go ahead, albeit late. And these A-level pupils told us the delay won't make up for time already lost to COVID.
Nothing's been changed to cope with the fact that I had to teach myself a lot of my course, and my teaching skills as an 18-year-old are not quite the same as my teachers.
There's still also the uncertainty that we might have a second lockdown, because the future isn't really clear as of now.
Still scarred by the shambles of last term's results season,
Question Secretary of State for Education.
Gavin Williamson insists exams are the fairest way to judge performance. There'll be support for students forced to self-isolate.
We need to ensure that every child, whether they're in the classroom or whether they're at home, are getting the education that they require.
But in just 1 month, this school has sent 30 children and 4 teachers home after suspected contact with the virus.
We're setting ourselves up for another fiasco.
The head teacher says the catch-up plans are unworkable and exams impossible.
Laptops for disadvantaged students arrived on our doorstep a week before the summer holidays. So the government's talking about £1 billion